morning. Assalamu alaikum. Good day for everyone joining this important ISAS BCPR seminar webinar. I am really happy to open this first institutional interaction between BCPR at Beacon House National University, Lahore, and Institute of South Asian Studies at National University, Singapore. And I am really happy to co-host this webinar with Iqbal Singh Sevia Saab. I would like to welcome all our distinguished speakers, guests, panelists who have joined us for this webinar. As I mentioned, Director ISAS Iqbal Singh Sevia will be the co-host, will also be chair of one of the sessions today. Our speakers include Dr. Moeed Yusuf, who has been former National Security Advisor of Pakistan and is currently President Vice Chancellor of the Beacon House National University. Then we have Ambassador Jalil Abbas Jilani, who is a former caretaker Foreign Minister, Foreign Secretary, a distinguished diplomat. Then we have an expert, Madam Naseem Zahra, expert in international affairs and strategic issues in South Asia. She is also a leading journalist and a TV anchor on main channels in Pakistan, TV channels in Pakistan. We have Ambassador Tariq Karim, a distinguished former diplomat of Bangladesh, who is also director of Center of Bay of Bengal Studies at Independent University. And then last but not least, we have research teams of BCPR and ISAS. Joining me is Dr. Zainab Ahmed, who is assistant professor at School of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences at the Beacon House National University. Now, Beacon House Center for Policy Research is a policy think tank at BNU Lahore. The purpose is, the objective is in undertaking objective and independent policy research in all areas of policy domain, like foreign policy, national security, economy, public policy. And in addition to our research activities at the university in Pakistan, in Lahore or in Islamabad, one of our important areas in past couple of years has been to engage, to establish linkages with institutes and think tanks and universities or policy institutions at national level as well as at international level. And today's webinar is actually an important part of this role of the BCPR, which BCPR is undertaking as policy think tank of the BNU to establish linkages with international institutions and in the institutions in the region. We look forward to increasing this is our first event, but we look forward to increasing our collaboration with ISAS to more concrete and specific areas and themes in the future. And when we were discussing with ISAS for institutional collaboration between ISAS and BCPR, so we thought that the first event should be on the theme of South Asia. And South Asia, and in an evolving global order, no theme can be more pertinent and more relevant today for beginning this kind of institutional collaboration. While we have very distinguished speakers who will be talking about the detailed elements and aspects of the evolving global order and how South Asia is impacted or South Asia's own dynamics, but I'll just briefly touch upon a few points. The global order, all of us know, has undergone and is still undergoing defining changes at a very fast pace. Some key features of the change, we all know there is a big shift, if not the decimation of the UN-centered post-World War II order, there is a big shift. The world is no more a unipolar world. We are moving towards, or we have already moved to, a phase of multipolar world. We are seeing a comprehensive rise of China. China not just as a power in our region, but China as a system, whether it is industry, whether it is technology, whether it is governance, or any other aspect of national life or politics. China is, or international life or politics, China is there with a big impact. Then there is a proliferation of wars, conflicts, and if you take a look at the past 5 years, a number of active hotspots, wars have been there. In President Trump's own words, there are a dozen wars, and he has been, he has succeeded in putting an end to many of them. So a large number of conflicts, hotspots and wars are surrounding us. And then when we look at the US as an important player, an important power in the global order, the order within the US under Trump is drastically different from the pre-Trump world. Whether it is a United States internal political dimensions, internal governance dimensions, or it is United States engagement with the rest of the world. So that these are the elements in terms of evolving global order. I think our panelists, our distinguished guests, will be discussing today, and we cannot have a better panel than this panel. But again, when we try to see internally at our region, at South Asia, we are looking at two kind of developments, two kind of factors, two kind of equations that are emerging. South Asia's own regional dynamics, which continue to emanate from its history, its politics, and interstate relations among the countries of South Asia. And then how the evolving global order is impacting the situation and politics in South Asia. When we take a closer look at South Asia, there is India-Pakistan relations. We continue to see no ice break in a dialogue or rapprochement between the two countries. At least since 2019, every kind of dialogue is stalled. The May 2025 military clash has brought new balance, new dimensions in the equation. Pakistan's active diplomatic engagement at the US level, at the international level, with the US and other actors, and a new confidence that we are seeing in Pakistan engaging with the rest of the world. We see India having, its own interaction. India is a big country, major economy, but it continues to have some stalemate with the United States, at least for the time being, in its, strategic partnership or in its trade negotiations. And then India-Pakistan dimension, an issue like water, which was considered for 6-7 decades like a settled issue of cooperation between the two countries. Now we have an Indus Water Treaty, which has been held in abeyance by India. So all these developments, then there are other developments other than India-Pakistan relations, other South Asian countries, Bangladesh. There have been major developments in Bangladesh in recent years, and how the politics and Bangladesh's relations with other countries of South Asia or other countries of the world will continue to move forward even after the forthcoming elections. Similarly, we have seen major developments recently in Nepal. How these developments will affect South Asian dynamics as well as Nepal's interaction with major powers, including India, China, and other powers. Then the latest development on Afghanistan, the least perceived of the developments that Afghan Taliban, Kabul under Afghan Taliban or Afghanistan under Afghan Taliban will undergo a deterioration of relations with Pakistan. And its, what will be its repercussions, what will be its implications for Pakistan, for Afghanistan, for the region. How these presence of such a large number of terrorist groups in Afghanistan or in the region, whether it is Al-Qaeda, Daesh, TTP, BLA, ETIM, or an entire plethora of terrorist groups reported in the UN Security Council mechanisms and other intelligence estimates. What are the US interests in South Asia, in Afghanistan, in other countries of South Asia? Then, and another important dimension, regional connectivity, regional economic integration in South Asia. South Asia is the least connected regions of the world. I think in our initial chat before starting the meeting, we were talking about that. Minimum trade, minimum connectivity, minimum regional economic integration. So in this scenario, this is the, painting the regional scenario with a broader brush. In this scenario, what kind of way forward we are looking at? Would the countries, India, Pakistan, other countries of South Asia, be moving towards an approach which is different from the approach of the past, which goes towards peace building and which goes towards regional economic integration? Or we will continue to see the clash, the polarization, the cleavages continue to increase? Then one important interaction that South Asia has to focus is with China. China is an important global power, and China has an extremely important relationship with South Asia, whether it is Pakistan, whether it is India, or other countries of South Asia. So, how do we look at China's engagement, China's interaction, China? How do we consider, how do we see China interacting with South Asia? So, all these questions, I think, as I said, this panel of a distinguished panel of experts, distinguished panel of people who have been seeing these developments with their own strategic assessment, with their own strategic experience, exposures. There cannot be a better panel than this to start ISIS BCPR collaboration in the future. With this, I will hand over the floor, hand over the mic to Iqbal Singh Sevia Sahab, who is the co-host of this meeting and who is as director of ISS and who is also will be chairing one of the sessions. And I'll request him that once he has delivered his remarks, then he can, introduce the next speaker. Iqbal Singh Sevia Sahab, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ambassador. Good afternoon to everyone who's joining us. Actually, I should say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone who's joining us, depending on whichever part of the world you're based in currently. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to today's joint online panel discussion entitled South Asia in an Evolving Global Order, which is co-organized by the Institute of South Asian Studies at the National University of Singapore and the Center for Policy Research at Beacon House National University, Lahore. We meet, as the ambassador rightly pointed out earlier, we meet at a moment of profound global transformation. Questions have arisen over whether the imposition of tariffs will reshape the way the international economy has functioned. The world is also witnessing intensifying great power rivalries, regional conflicts, and a gradual erosion of the multilateral order that has underpinned approaches to global security for decades. From the strategic competition between the United States and China to the ongoing conflicts in the Middle East and Eastern Europe, we're living through developments and crises that are redrawing the contours of international politics and reshaping regional priorities. At the same time, countries are seeking to deepen and broaden partnerships, and new multilateral forums are arising. South Asia is impacted by these transformations. But it is equally as important to note that the region of South Asia will play a crucial role in shaping the future of the global order. South Asia is home to a quarter of the world's population. Its demographics is also characterized by a very young population that can serve as a population dividend or pose a population challenge to the countries. South Asia is also a region with nuclear armed states and the fastest growing major economy in the world. It also bears minding that South Asia is one of the least integrated regions in the world, and attempts to shape regional cooperation have been stymied by bilateral tensions. South Asia's position in the Indian Ocean and the geostrategic framing of the Indo-Pacific means that it is intrinsically implicated in and impacted by broader geopolitical and geoeconomic competition. Indeed, it can be said that the region stands at the crossroads of growing geopolitical and geoeconomic uncertainty. Most South Asian states will also be impacted by the competition for influence and resources in the maritime domain, and the increasing importance of deep-sea mining and the securitization of subsea cables will only serve to intensify competition in the Indian Ocean. Thus, it is timely for us now to consider how South Asia will position itself within a rapidly changing global order. The ambassador has already raised a number of issues that we will be discussing in today's panel, but also that we will continue to work together on in the future. But let me throw a few more out there. Can the region of South Asia move beyond zero-sum game politics towards shared economic and human security? How can the South Asian states collectively navigate the erosion of multilateralism and great power competition while safeguarding their sovereignty and development priorities? And what forms of regional cooperation might foster peace and resilience in the years ahead? These are issues that are of importance to ISAS. We are an institute that studies South Asian countries, their engagements with their neighbors and global actors, as well as the evolving regional dynamics. Today's discussions seek to explore how global and regional shifts are reshaping South Asia's security architecture and its economic trajectory. Among other issues, the panel will examine evolving US policy, India-Pakistan dynamics, and emerging security partnerships, such as the recently concluded Pakistan-Saudi Arabia defense cooperation, against the backdrop of the region's persistent connectivity gaps. We are honored to have with us a distinguished panel of speakers who will share their perspectives, offer expert insights, and present practical policy recommendations. I'm particularly delighted that Dr. Moeed Yusuf will be delivering the keynote address. Like all of you, I am looking forward to his thoughts and his perspectives. This collaboration between ISAS and BNU Center for Policy Research reflects our shared commitment to fostering informed dialogue on South Asia's role in the world. As the global order continues to evolve, such exchanges are vital for generating ideas and deepening understanding across borders. And while this is our first collaboration, I assure you this will not be the only collaboration. We're looking forward to more conversations in the future. And with that, I must add that I look forward to the rich and thoughtful, provoking exchange that I'm sure will follow, and a discussion which I'm sure will be eagerly will attract eager participation in our question and answer session as well. So with that, I thank you all once again for joining us, and I wish everyone an engaging and productive session. Should I?
It's
And now, it is my distinct pleasure to invite Dr. Moeed Yusuf to deliver the keynote address. Now, Dr. Moeed Yusuf is no stranger to anyone here. Dr. Moeed Yusuf is the Vice Chancellor of the Beacon House National University in Lahore, Pakistan. He's a prominent Pakistani scholar, policy analyst, and former National Security Advisor to the Prime Minister of Pakistan. And he served in that role from 2021 to 2022. Known for his expertise in national security, foreign policy, and international relations, he has played a significant role in shaping Pakistan's strategic discourse on regional peace, connectivity, and human security. Before assuming the role of NSA, he served as Special Assistant to the Prime Minister on National Security and Strategic Policy Planning, where he contributed to policy frameworks aimed at promoting economic security, regional stability, and constructive international engagement. His tenure emphasized a shift towards a comprehensive national security paradigm, integrating economic and foreign policy priorities. Prior to his public service, Dr. Yusuf held an extensive academic and policy career in the United States, notably as Associate Vice President at the U.S. Institute of Peace, where he led South Asia programs and worked on conflict prevention, counterterrorism, and peace-building initiatives. He holds a master's and doctorate degrees in political science from Boston University and has authored several scholarly works, which I'm sure many of us have learned from and enjoyed reading as well. A respected voice in both national and international policy circles, Dr. Yusuf continues to contribute to public debate and research on security, governance, and Pakistan's evolving role in the global order. With that, Dr. Yusuf, I'm delighted to hand the floor to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, afternoon, and evening to all of you. I would like to, first of all, begin by thanking Iqbal Sab, yourself, your colleagues at ISAS at the National University of Singapore, my own colleagues, Ambassador Mansoor, Dr. Zainab, and the entire team at the BNU Center for Policy Research, fellow speakers, Ambassador Tariq Karim, the dedication you've shown to be online. I've just heard where you are and how you're connecting. I'm extremely grateful. And Madam Naseem Zara and Ambassador Jalil Jilani and others. So thank you very much for taking the time. I am sure this is the beginning of a very, very productive and fruitful partnership, which BNU will remain committed to. On the topic, I will just lay out the framework. I think both Ambassador Mansoor and Iqbal Singh Sahab have put out very clearly the fairly dismal state that we find ourselves in as South Asians. Let me just say that there are 5 characteristics that define South Asia for me today. The first one is South Asia is going to be in the eye of the storm, which is defined by the increasing contestation between the US and China. Given the geography, given the importance of the countries, given the presence of nuclear weapons in 1/5 of the world, there is no way for South Asia to escape this coming great power competition. The question is only how these countries maneuver around it and whether they are able to find the maturity to work together, to benefit from it, rather than being played as pawns against one another. The second characteristic, unfortunately, is that conflict, terrorism, and violence is on the rise again. This is both interstate conflict and intrastate conflict, including terrorism across the region in different varying degrees. But no country of South Asia, unfortunately, is totally immune to either direct or indirect threat of conflict. The third is political turmoil. Again, across South Asia, we are seeing a very diverse yet common thread of disenchantment with status quos, with governments, with processes, whether democratic or not. We've seen governments being toppled in Bangladesh, in Nepal, an intense conversation and perhaps a push to the right we are seeing in India. Pakistan has its own challenges constitutionally and otherwise, and Sri Lanka also not too long ago went through a political upheaval. If I were to put this characteristic simply, it is that the citizenry of South Asia is clearly not convinced of the governance paradigms and delivery of governance of their governments, whoever they may be. Virtually all of South Asia, I would argue, is now an elite captured economy. So that's the third characteristic. The fourth one, which is tied to this elite captured economy, is economic discrepancies within countries and across countries. The haves versus have-nots inequality in South Asia is astounding. We've got a country in South Asia that is the fourth largest economy, would become perhaps the third largest economy very soon. A success story in the macroeconomic space where at least 500 million people are struggling beyond a doubt. There's another country of 250 million people, again, doing well macroeconomically now after its struggles, and yet poverty is rife. I could say the same thing about Bangladesh, etc., etc. So the inequality within countries is astounding, even though the economic discrepancies across the region are also huge in terms of, a 4 trillion GDP, and then perhaps a very, very small one if you look at Afghanistan in that sense. And the final one is the outcome, I think, of everything I've mentioned, which is that South Asia remains the least integrated region in the world if you were to calculate integration and the parameters of integration objectively. So if there is one word that I can put to this, this is a collective failure, to be honest, if we were to think as South Asian citizens of the world. I want to spend the rest of my time talking about the way forward rather than why we are where we are. And here I would point to something that Pakistan as a country has codified as official policy, which is a paradigm of cooperative geoeconomics. Iqbal Sahab mentioned comprehensive national security. It fundamentally boils down to a model of cooperative geoeconomics, which talks about creating positive interdependence across countries in South Asia and beyond, such that the number one priority for the governments becomes human security. Human security defined as ensuring the prosperity, the safety, the security, and dignity of your most disempowered citizen. That's the shift that Pakistan has talked about for itself. And the only way it can get there is by working together with its neighbors and its partners beyond the neighborhood. How do you achieve that? There are three basic pillars of this vision. The first one is development partnerships, which means that countries work together on trade, on investment, and on sharing of skilled and unskilled labor, i.e. manpower export. The second pillar is regional connectivity. And I think this is the most relevant to the conversation we're having. In Pakistan, at least, we went through every single aspect of economic revival and growth that we could. And there was not a single framework in which Pakistan could grow at the pace and the potential that it espouses without taking the region along. And I would argue that this is true for every single country of the region, most of all India, which is the largest country and has to take the region along if the region has to grow. In the regional connectivity paradigm, South Asia has everything from potential of trade to energy to transit to manpower sharing. Without a doubt, the future of South Asia, if we are talking about a multi-trillion collective economy, has to be to take the region along. When I hear countries talk about a minus other formula, which we've heard, unfortunately, it really tells me that we are going to regress rather than progress. The third pillar of this, apart from the development partnerships and the regional connectivity, is peace. Because peace is the enabler that would allow all of us to work together and grow if we are moving in that direction. When I talk about peace, ultimately it takes me to a very complicated, controversial point about how foreign policies of the region have to be devised. And there, at least the vision that I would put forward is no camp politics. South Asia has to work together to ensure that we have middle power partnerships. We're all middle powers. We have middle power partnerships where on specific issues that matter to South Asia, we can create a common position to push back against any effort by any power in the world to use our countries as pawns in the larger game and use our territories as proxy battlegrounds for greater interests. Mind you, South Asia across the board has a history of being used and wanting to be used by greater powers in varying degrees, and the result has not been good for us. The future of international relations, ladies and gentlemen, I believe, is neither unipolar nor bipolar nor the classic multipolar. It is going to be a issue-based coalition order with spheres of influence where middle powers will come together on various issues. They won't have a coalition writ large. Different middle powers will coalesce on different issues to find their sphere of influence. And there, a divided South Asia is decidedly worse than a collective South Asia in terms of the positions we take. South Asia cannot connect to Central Asia unless Afghanistan is peaceful and Pakistan becomes the hub for that connectivity. South Asia cannot connect to BIMSTEC beyond and beyond East to Southeast Asia unless India is peaceful and opens up its corridors eastward. We cannot move together unless our flanks, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, work together with the rest of the countries to move forward. There is one word that unfortunately we have all forgotten. The word is called SAARC, the regional organization that showed so much potential and has not taken off the ground. We have to revive a collective conversation because it has a parameter set for South Asian countries from trade to security to other things to move forward. Unfortunately, at this moment, it only seems to be a pipe dream. We've got a situation where the two largest countries of the region, India and Pakistan, are at loggerheads. We've been in a conflict in May. We have a situation where India and Bangladesh, a relationship, unfortunately, that it sort of gone in a direction where it seems to have reversed now, where some tensions have emerged since the overthrow of the government there. Afghanistan and Pakistan, as Mansoor Saab mentioned, who would have imagined, are in an active conflict, so to say. This doesn't seem to be the region that one envisions will connect, unfortunately, anytime soon. You've also got great power competition in broad daylight being played out. We've got tensions now between India and the US. And it's all a situation that makes one very, very pessimistic. The region is held hostage ultimately to an India-Pakistan competition or animosity or whatever you want to call it, given the weight that these two countries bring to the table. There, if I may say so, unfortunately, one of the countries in this contest has basically declared a complete disinterest in dialogue and in moving forward. Forget about the region, even bilaterally. And I'm afraid, unless the Pakistan India conversation comes back on track, which is what one hopes, which is what one has advocated, even officially and unofficially, I'm afraid the region is not going to be able to move forward. The reality still remains that whoever has tried to forget the geography, forget the neighbors, forget that we have to grow together as a region, unfortunately, they have hurt themselves. The region's collective potential remains, but the reality also remains that we are not moving where in the direction that we should. If I were to conclude on a positive note, I would say that there is still an agreement that the future of the region lies in coalescing and moving together um, from economics to ensuring peace across the region. The cooperative geoeconomic framework that Pakistan has espoused, I think, still remains the only way to integrate the region economically and ultimately benefit our people. The sad reality is that leaderships have been unable to focus on the peoples of the region who ultimately are the only ones who matter. So my final word is that while the states try and figure out where to move, while the states agree that this cooperative geoeconomics should come into play but is not coming into play, why not allow people to people interaction? Why not allow the people of South Asia to talk, to meet, to engage, and find a path forward to lower the temperature which exists in interstate relationships? Unfortunately, even that part is not functional anymore. And that is why even at the societal level, there is angst. There's now in some countries, unfortunately, a negative perception about the other, almost hatred. And as a Pakistani, I've actually made the very outliers argument, if you will, that some countries should consider unilaterally opening their visas for others. If a million Indians want to come to my country and look at my country and the reality of my country, if a million want to go from mine to another and another and another, let people engage and they will see the reality for themselves, so that the narratives being espoused, let's say, by a government which is negative about the other, it will be defeated itself. Divided families, religious tourism, there is so much that can happen even if governments don't get along. But, ladies and gentlemen, without maturely acting as states and peoples, I guarantee you that South Asia's future is to become a pawn in the great power competition. We cannot escape the US-China contest that is coming our way. In fact, as I said, where I started, we are in the eye of the storm. The destiny is in our hands, in the hands of our leaders. People can impact and affect that destiny. We just need the space to do it. Thank you very much for giving me the time.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Mohit Yusuf, for delivering your keynote address. And with this keynote address, now our session moves to the panel discussion of today. And our panel discussion, the chairperson of our panel discussion will be Associate Professor Iqbal Singh Sevia. Let me briefly introduce him and hand over the session to him, because then he will be introducing the participants, panelists in the who will be part of the panel discussion. Associate Professor Iqbal Singh Sevia is Director of the Institute of South Asian Studies at the National University of Singapore. He is an internationally recognized scholar of contemporary and modern South Asia, whose core research focuses on South Asian politics, social and political thought, governance, and Islamic thought. He has held academic appointments in leading institutions globally and is the author of several publications. Before joining ISAS, Associate Professor Sevia was an associate professor with the Department of History at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, where he was a faculty member from 2012 to 2021. Prior to this, he was an assistant professor and the coordinator of the Contemporary Islam program at the S. Rajanathan School of International Studies at Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. Associate Professor Sevia's publications include The Political Philosophy of Muhammad Iqbal, Islam and Nationalism in Late Colonial India, and several other publications. Associate Professor Sevia holds a Doctorate of Philosophy in History from the University of Oxford. He graduated with a bachelor's degree in history from National University of Singapore and master's degree from the School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London. Associate Professor Iqbal Singh Sevia, as the chair of this panel discussion, now I give floor to you for taking the proceedings forward.
Thank you, Ambassador, for the very generous introduction as well. We've got on to a good start. A number of issues were raised by the Ambassador in the introductory remarks, and Dr. Yusuf put perspective to not just the shifts happening at the global terrain, but also the sort of evolutions happening within South Asia itself. And I was taking notes as Dr. Yusuf was speaking. I think three of the things that are particularly relevant for the discussion today would be, one is how the states in South Asia would position themselves with regards to great power competition. The second is the fact that Dr. Yusuf also brought out the point that we should not only focus on what are the recognized great powers. We should look at the role that the middle powers and the rising powers can play in shaping the future global order as well. And the third point was about connectivity. This is something that we've all addressed in some way or form or manner, and I suspect will be taken up further. So I've already had my time to say some introductory remarks earlier, so I will not take any more space in this discussion now. And I would instead immediately like to invite the panelists to share their thoughts. So let me start by introducing our first panelist of the day, Ambassador Jalil Abbas Jilani. Ambassador Jalil Abbas Jilani is a retired Pakistani diplomat who most recently served as the caretaker foreign minister of Pakistan from August 2023 to March 2024. Over his long and distinguished career in the Foreign Service, he held several key diplomatic positions, including serving as Pakistan's Foreign Secretary from 2012 to 2013 and as Ambassador to the United States from 2013 to 2017. His extensive diplomatic portfolio also includes tenures as High Commissioner to Australia and Ambassador to Belgium, Luxembourg, and the European Union. Earlier in his career, he served as the Foreign Office spokesperson and as Acting High Commissioner to India, gaining deep experience in bilateral and multilateral diplomacy. Following his retirement from active diplomatic service, Ambassador Jilani remained engaged in policy and strategic affairs through his association with leading think tanks such as the Institute of Regional Studies. He also contributed as a member of the Prime Minister's Advisory Council on Foreign Affairs. Holding an MSc in Defense and Strategic Studies and a Bachelor of Law, Ambassador Jilani continues to participate in national and international discussions on foreign policy, security and regional affairs, offering insights drawn from decades of diplomatic experience. And with that, Ambassador Jilani, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much, Iqbal Sahab, and other respected members of the panel. I was listening to Dr. Mueed Yusuf, and I think he has rightly depicted the overall situation, global situation, and its impact on South Asia. Whether it's the US-China rivalry, which certainly has become the defining feature of international relations, and also is making deep impact in South Asia as well. This rivalry is not only it reflects the deep shift in the global power, but it also extends to domain like technology, economics, and security. And from my perspective, it is certainly going to shape the world for many years to come. I have served in Washington, and I am aware that in Washington, there is a continuity across administration and in all the amongst all the stakeholders, in pursuing policies of strategic competition and technological restrictions towards China. There is little indication that this approach will end anytime soon. It's how it impacts South Asia. It impacts South Asia, as was rightly pointed out by Dr. Mueed Yusuf, that since 1947, the rivalry between various power centers during the Cold War has had a deep impact in strengthening or hardening positions between two major countries in South Asia, India and Pakistan. And this is something that has been reflected by many of the scholars. This competition also basically, and also alliances that were formed by major powers in South Asia also in some ways hardened the positions by the respective countries in the resolution of issues between the two countries. We also need to be aware that this China-US rivalry generates a lot of nervousness amongst the South Asian countries because of the fear that at some stage, if the rivalry goes beyond a certain point, they may not be confronted with a choice of either with one side or the other. SARC, a very great initiative that was taken in the 60s, has almost dead again because of the rivalry between Pakistan and India. Regional connectivity remains a farce. And then there is a strong realization that because of the Indian alliance with the US spreading over almost 2 decades, or maybe since 2000, Indian position with regard to issues related to other South Asian countries has also hardened, not only with Pakistan, but also other South Asian countries as well. Its aggressive behavior is also witnessed by many because of the arrogance that has set in, or because of the confidence in India that it is not under any pressure from the international community to resolve disputes with the other countries in a matter of, in accordance with international legality or according to the relevant commitments to the international community in the shape of UN Security Council resolutions, or for that matter, the bilateral agreements that were signed between the two sides. Talking about Pakistan-India relations, there is a strong perception in Pakistan that ever since the arrival of Prime Minister Modi at the political scene in 2014, relations between Pakistan and India, they have worsened to a large extent. There is a perpetual tension. I think we are passing through the worst phase in our relations since our history. I say that because in the past, both countries have followed a familiar pattern whereby there would be periods of high tension, but then they would be followed by a dialogue or some kind of a peace initiative between the two countries. Despite conflicts, mistrust, propaganda, and even wars, the door to dialogue was never shut. But the current situation is unprecedented in a way that there is absolutely no dialogue between the two sides, and there is no willingness on the part of India to engage with Pakistan at any level. There is only a interaction, which is again becoming a dialogue of the dead between the two sides at the level of track 2, which also during which Pakistan side has proposed a number of positive suggestions to the Indian side, revival of dialogue, addressing our respective concerns on terrorism, resolution of disputes, and to make Pakistan, India as a model of peace and stability in our region, so that many of the opportunities that are available to other South Asian countries, they could be availed. But then since August 2019, the relationship between our two countries have taken a downturn in the shape of, because of the Indian decision to repeal Article 370 of the Indian Constitution, Article 35A of the Indian Constitution, and changing the demography of the Indian occupied Kashmir. Since then, there are no high commissioners in the respective countries. There is also no, the mission strengths have been downgraded, no official dialogue. There are the propaganda rhetoric has also intensified in the last several years, and the situation, is leading towards some kind of a perpetual hostility between our two sides. The question that is there in the minds of everyone is that whether there will be an end to this hostility between the two countries. As I mentioned, that the perception in Pakistan is the current situation benefits the Indian government in promoting their domestic political narrative. Then also there is a very strong perception that in India wants to avoid a dialogue between the two countries, so that so as to avoid any discussion on the core issue of Jammu and Kashmir. And the terrorism is being used to deflect kind of attention, and also to externalize India from its domestic and domestic terrorism that it faces in India. In May this year, we had a conflict. We were on the verge of a major war, but thanks to the good offices of the United States of America, there was a ceasefire, and one had expected that after this high level of tension between our two countries, we would be we will come back to some kind of we will exercise some kind of a restraint and return to reason. But instead, aggressive and statements are being made on the other side. The Indian Army Chief recently threatened Pakistan to erase from the world map, which certainly was a very, very provocative statement, especially in a nuclear environment. And from our point of view, such statements do not really serve any useful purpose. In my view, the issues can be resolved between the two sides. They are political in nature. Our issues, whether it's the Jammu and Kashmir dispute, whether it's the issues related to Siachen Glacier or Sir Creek, or for that matter, terrorism. But then it is very important that we understand and respect each other's concerns. Our major concerns certainly involve the non-resolution of disputes between the two countries, mainly the Jammu and Kashmir dispute, which is the main cause of all this tension that we have seen since 1947. India's in recent months, there is a major concern that has emerged in the shape of the suspension of Indus Waters Treaty by India following the May conflict between our two countries. This is something which is certainly which constitutes a violation of international treaties, the rights of the lower riparian states. So that also is our concern. We also understand that India has concerns with regard to terrorism. On that, I'll say that we also have concerns, same concern. Maybe our concerns related to terrorism are more in terms of their intensity. We are concerned because of the support that India is extending to terrorist organizations like BLA, BRA, TTP, etc. And India is concerned with regard to the activities of certain extremist organizations that used to operate from Pakistan, but which have also become a concern for Pakistan. So it's extremely important that we basically engage with each other to address each other's concerns and help resolve the disputes between our two countries. That certainly would require political will, statesmanship by the two sides, taking some bold decisions by the sides. The role of the media is again very, very important in lowering the temperature between the two sides. The role of the business communities and civil societies is also very, very critical. And another important aspect is the role of the international community. That, from my perspective, is also very, very important, because if you look at the history of Pakistan-India relations since 1947, all wars and conflicts that have taken place between our two countries, they were averted, and from going from beyond a certain point because of the mediatory efforts made by two countries, one the United States of America, and that secondly the United Kingdom. So even the latest recent conflict was also, ceasefire was negotiated by President Trump and the United States of America. So this is the context. I thought that, but then unfortunately, we do not sign any indication of any change in the Indian policy. The rhetoric continues, charges against Pakistan continues. But this is not only Pakistan, but other South Asian countries, in my view, are also feeling the same kind of a sense of insecurity that vis-a-vis a larger, more aggressive India. So I think we need to get together and try and sort of resolve these issues. I would very strongly recommend that we need to establish a mechanism of conflict resolution and conflict prevention in our, between our two countries. The other South Asian countries also perhaps engage with India in a similar fashion. SAARC needs to be revived. In the context of Pakistan-India relations, I think we also need to establish a back channel as soon as possible, so that on many occasions, one little incident taking place in one country or the other is interpreted differently and leads to misunderstandings and misperceptions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ambassador Jilani. I have some questions, but we will come back to the questions after you've done. But one of your statements was that the media plays an important role in shaping narratives and shaping opinion as well. I think that provides a good segue to our next panelist, Ms. Naseem Zehra. Ms. Naseem Zehra is a prominent Pakistani journalist, author, and television anchor, known for her incisive analysis and deep understanding of Pakistan's domestic and foreign affairs. With a career spanning several decades, she has established herself as one of the country's most respected voices in political and strategic commentary. She has hosted primetime current affairs programs on leading television networks, where her interviews and debates have shaped public discourse on key national and regional issues. Her journalistic work reflects a strong commitment to accountability, transparency, and informed public debate, earning her recognition both in Pakistan and internationally. Beyond journalism, Ms. Zehra is also an accomplished author and policy analyst. A critically acclaimed book, From Kargil to the Coup, Events That Shook Pakistan, offers a detailed account of the 1999 Kargil conflict and its political aftermath, showcasing her depth of research and understanding of Pakistan's civil-military relations. She frequently participates in academic and policy forums, contributing to discussions on governance, diplomacy, and national security. Known for integrity and analytical rigor, Ms. Zehra continues to play a vital role in promoting nuanced and fact-based dialogue on Pakistan's evolving political and strategic landscape. With that, Ms. Zehra, the floor is yours.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. Thank you so much to ISAS, to BCPR for inviting me, and certainly on a subject which is not only important, but may I add, indeed a very difficult subject. I'm glad we had Dr. Moeed Yusuf give us that overview, and indeed a kind of not such a pessimistic overview. I think that it was a realistic overview, and in terms of the possibilities, I think I would like to focus on what this context really entails. As far as the global situation is concerned, I think it's all too obvious, and speakers before me have talked about it in detail. What we have seen in the recent past is that clearly South Asia has is becoming a new frontier of global big power competition, and we see that at play right now. I think there are multiple questions in terms of and issues that some have been talked about that create the context within which we have to then explore what is the possibility, what are the chances of us looking at South Asia as a cohesive unit. Because while we're talking about multipolarity, while we're talking about end of unilateralism, we are simultaneously seeing that regionalism is absolutely a critical building block, critical foundational kind of block for countries to take off, for regions to take off and progress in all spheres, whether it is economic, whether it is security, whether it is diplomacy, whether it's people's welfare. So without regionalism, I think that we are in a situation where any kind of journeying forward for states with this belief that, as major powers, they can progress in isolation from the context, the geographical context in which they exist, would be too simplistic. And we are seeing the results of that kind of an approach. If you were to start from South Asia, I mean, what are we seeing? Whether we talk of poverty, underdevelopment, insecurity, terrorism, and underdevelopment of the citizenry, that is not possible. You cannot address that until and unless there is an integrated approach to development, to security, to economic well-being. And one great example that, my favorite example is, if you were to look at the ASEAN countries, and the context in which ASEAN came into being was a context where there was so much chaos, and there was continuously, interference of one state, and into another state's affairs. And then you saw a group of countries within Southeast Asia come together and talk about some basic principles in terms of cooperation, in terms of trying to rise together. Yes, you had the role of powers, big powers then too in the region, but by and large, it was decisions that were taken by countries that laid the foundations for ASEAN. And today we see that ASEAN is one of the most prosperous regions. I think South Asia is absolutely at the other end of the spectrum. If ASEAN exists at 10 on a scale, South Asia exists at 2 and 3. And the point is that let's call a spade until and unless Pakistan and India do not come resolve their issues, until and unless India and Pakistan are not on the same page in terms of outlook towards development, towards political stability, towards security, towards trade, etc., we will remain in the kind of problem that we are in right now. And what is the problem? SARC is dead for all purposes. India tried BIMSTEC. It hasn't taken it very far, been able to take it very far. The truth is that the Grand Trunk Road remains the absolutely indispensable artery if India has to move towards Central Asia, if Pakistan has to look at South Asia. So there are geographical, there are structural issues in addition to structural compulsions, in addition to other basically compulsions of underdevelopment, compulsions of really, if we need to move away from being one of the most underdeveloped region, chaotic region in the world, our engagement is absolutely critical. And as far as that is concerned, I think that when we talk about state versus society, civil society, we can, in fact, let me throw in state versus sections of society, including the trading class, including commercial class, the intellectuals, etc. We know in the context of South Asia that the ability of the state to block all this, even in the digital era, is huge. And we see that one of the major countries in the region has ensured or continues to ensure that the state basically superimposes its own worldview, its own approach to security, own approach to interaction, etc. And therefore, whether it's artists, whether it's writers, whether it is any kind of interaction is limited. In fact, it's been brought down to zero. Let me also say here that as far as external players are concerned, they have, and in fact, when we talk of major powers, I think their utility and their role is limited. We have heard for the last, we have seen, in fact, for the last many decades that China has its own view and is always very cautious in engaging, but we have seen the role of the United States in the region. Yes, in the beginning, we saw it play a role in some hardening of positions in India and Pakistan, because you can talk about the US's involvement, one side or the other, but we know that the United States or any other country has a limited role. Ultimately, we will have to have India and Pakistan engage directly, because whenever we moved towards some kind of solution, the Lahore summit was, I think, was one of the high points between India and Pakistan, and positive terms. And that was something that we worked on ourselves, and we can go, there are many examples, but let me suffice it to say that we really, Pakistan and India need some kind of change within their own thinking. Let me say this kind of fairly clearly, that what we saw in May is an example, is an illustration of the way Delhi feels it can resolve the problems. I think Delhi's view as of itself being a major power, which it is, there is no doubt about it, that it can, therefore, unilateralism on multiple fronts, preemptive strikes, throwing law away, international treaty away, which was really the golden standard of sharing water, Indus water, etc. All those issues illustrate the point that instead of moving towards engagement, there is a different view that at this point we are seeing is inaction from Delhi, and that really needs to change. And let me quickly add here that Pakistan is certainly has not been looking towards Delhi exclusively. If you look at westwards, Pakistan, westwards of itself, it has now engaged. Whether you look at the Pakistan-Saudi Mutual Defense Agreement treaty, whether you look at other Middle Eastern countries looking towards Pakistan for security reasons, Pakistan and its relations with Turkey, China is obviously a critical country for us, Pakistan and the United States. We are seeing the beginnings of greater interaction and perhaps engagement. So it's, and Central Asia's important countries in Central Asia, Pakistan is engaging with, CPEC and Gwadar, etc. So we are, Afghanistan is a problem, and Afghanistan is a critical country for Pakistan. Pakistan and Afghanistan will engage. It will be kind of blow hot, blow cold, but these two are indispensable partners, and it will have to be ironed out. So the point is that there is ultimately, if you're looking at genuine progress, if you're looking at a region going beyond its really very, for want of a better word, I think we are in a very pathetic state in South Asia. But to alter that, the key lies in Delhi and in Islamabad. And I think that we have enough evidence out there to say that Pakistan obviously is keen to engage, but there are some questions obviously that will have to be addressed, some issues that will have to be resolved, whether it is terrorism and whether it is issues like Kashmir. So it's one region which is most wanting in terms of integration, in terms of connectivity, and its potential is limitless. So what we now need to focus on here is, given these realities, what is it that we can do to essentially alter? Is there any kind, not alter is kind of a big word, but to start a process where we can at least things may begin to look more hopeful? And it seems to me that on the one hand, where Pakistan and India act in a multilateral context, whether it is SCO or other similar forums, or engagement on issues like climate change and the kind of crisis that is going to increasingly be more of an existential crisis for this entire region, especially India and Pakistan. We need to really find ways of cooperating in these areas. Yes, civil society engagement is important, especially in these areas. I've been to several track tours, India-Pakistan track tours, and it's kind of more of the same. In the last couple of years, we are seeing essentially every side goes with its own position, and there is affirmation of existing positions which are deadlocked, which is got us nowhere beyond the deadlock that exists. So while laying one's faith in the potential of South Asia, and the need to absolutely break through this kind of situation that we are in right now, where it's a deadlock situation between Delhi and Islamabad, and the fact is that this deadlock situation has to be overcome through direct or indirect means, so that we can move towards actualizing the potential of South Asia. We are seeing that in Pakistan, that Pakistan has got more active in the recent months in South Asia. We are seeing with Bangladesh, Pakistan's relations have really moved in a very positive direction. After 25 years or so, we are going to be seeing direct flights. I don't want to go into details, but Pakistan is moving in that direction with Bangladesh, and with other countries we have relations which are excuse me, which are there's trade, there's security, there's partnership of different kinds. And now in recent months we've seen Pakistan, China moving together in the region. But that's not going to result in any satisfactory outcome as far as South Asia as a developed region, as an integrated region, as a region where connectivity is possible. Hence, we really have to try and crack this really hard nut, but one that absolutely is a must for us if we are looking at human progress for the region as a whole. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Zera, for your comments. And again, if I extract just one point from what you mentioned that we need to think about how and what we can do to lay the basis for greater regional integration in multiple domains. I think this actually opens up a good moment to introduce our next speaker, who's done a fair amount of work relating to development of regional integrative structures and architectures. And this is Ambassador Tariq Karim. And I take great pleasure in saying that he's a colleague at ISAS as well. So let me briefly introduce Ambassador Tariq Karim. Ambassador Tariq Karim is a distinguished visiting research fellow at the Institute of South Asian Studies at the National University of Singapore. He is also currently the director of the Center of Bay of Bengal Studies at the Independent University, Bangladesh. Between 2014 and 2020, he was an advisory consultant for South Asia regional integration and engagement to the World Bank, as well as strategic advisor to its South Asia Water Initiative from 2014 to 2020. Ambassador Karim is a member of the advisory board of the National Bureau of Asian Research of Seattle and Washington, D.C., United States. He's also an honorary advisor emeritus to Cosmos Foundation, Bangladesh. Earlier, he was a distinguished fellow at the Vivekananda International Foundation of New Delhi, India from 2014 to 2017. As a career diplomat, Ambassador Karim has served extensively at home and abroad. My apologies. After opting for early retirement in 1998, he was recalled twice to serve the nation, notably as ambassador to the US and as Bangladesh's High Commissioner to India, when he enjoyed the personal rank and status of a Minister of State of Bangladesh. His other senior assignments abroad were as ambassador to Iran with concurrent accreditation to Lebanon, High Commissioner to South Africa with concurrent accreditation to 4 African states, Deputy High Commissioner in New Delhi, and Deputy Chief of Mission in Beijing. At the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Bangladesh, notably as Additional Foreign Secretary, Ambassador Karim helped bring closure to long-festering bilateral problems with Bangladesh's neighbors, and also championed government policy to promote sub-regional cooperation between Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, and Nepal in the form of the BBIN as a means of working towards economic development and overall security for all 4 nations, as a stepping stone to larger regional cooperation with the South Asia Association for Regional Cooperation and the Bay of Bengal Initiative for multi-sectoral technical and economic cooperation and regional groupings. With that, Ambassador Tariq Karim, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Iqbal, for this very generous and rather fulsome introduction. Good day to everybody. It's an honor being on this panel with such other distinguished co-panelists, speaking on a subject which is not only moot, but I think of increasing importance it will be for all of us. I compliment Dr. Mueed Yusuf for the overview that he gave us. It was very comprehensive, it was very realistic, and it was very pragmatic. And in a sense, the fact that I have no quarrels with any of the points. In fact, I wholeheartedly endorse the way forward that he's tried to spell out. So I will confine my remarks to expanding on some of those and perhaps adding some of my own perspective to some of those. As he correctly said, we are in the eye of the storm. And in a sense, I have always regretted the fact that we have dealt ourselves out from, as a region, becoming a force to reckon with in global order or the emerging global order. South Asia together perhaps could have helped for Asia as a continent to emerge into light on its own in this century. However, what I see is somewhat disheartening. Unless we can get our acts together, and this is a major problem, we will probably act as a disruptor to this process. The conflicts are, yes, interstate and intrastate. But, if I see our own development as a state, we have been bedeviled by what I call a schizophrenic identity, which keeps fighting itself to its own detriment. We have survived as a state. We actually achieved quite commendable macroeconomic targets beyond what we had expected we could get and beyond what the world had expected. But then the disparity between the rich and the poor widened so much. And 54 years on after we gained independence as a separate nation, we find this playing out domestically. When I look on this, it's what happened in Bangladesh and what happened in Nepal and Sri Lanka. This is the rising of the new generation, these Generation Z or whatever you wish to call it, who are quite divorced from what happened in 47 and 71. They look at the future and they look at themselves. Bangladesh until the COVID was doing extremely well. What COVID did was it suddenly wiped out all the gains that we had made in raising our people up from below the poverty line. But it pushed as many people back into the below the poverty line in those 2 years, but those pushed back were significantly urban poor. They were the people who had come from rural areas, started doing jobs and informal businesses and doing lots of other things, raising up the status of their own economic status of their families, and suddenly they found that they were out of job. This is basically one of the things I think which led to what happened in 2024. The urban poor basically are the fodder for the proletariat who form revolutions. Now, I also accept what Dr. Yusuf said, that we have not been able to emerge as an integrated region because the core three South Asian countries have indulged in othering others. And in this game of othering others, it has also gone deep into the domestic politics. And domestic politics becomes a very, very important factor of how foreign policy is shaped. If the domestic politics, unfortunately, the seeds go back to 47 when 3 states were created out of 1, and it also created a majority-minority syndrome, with the minority of one becoming the majority in others. The boundary lines between what is domestic and what is external becomes totally fuzzy, very, very blurred. And we have seen that interplay happening ever since, from 47 until today, and I don't know when it will end. Right now, we are seeing again, it's a cyclical thing within Bangladesh. In Nepal, it's somewhat different. In Nepal, I have actually more hope seeing what's happening in Nepal, because I think they have learned the art of coalition building after they achieved their own democracy following the overthrow of the monarchy. They have learned that we need to talk with other parties and sit across the table and arrive at formulas. We, unfortunately, meaning in Bangladesh, perhaps certainly in India, although they have a history of coalition building, but it's again a very fractured coalition building. It's highly polarized. We have to, Dr. Mueed Yusuf mentioned another very important fact. For South Asia to grow, our economies have to link with regions east and west of us. And for South Asia as a whole to link to regions west of us, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, having reasonably good relations and interactive relations with each other is important for us to go that way. For the region to connect to east of us, India, Bangladesh, and Myanmar need to work together to go the eastward and link up with the economies in the East and Southeast Asia. And in both these directions, we are steamate. Because of the emergence of Indo-Pacific narrative, which has been growing since the importance of the Indian Ocean came into the forefront in the 70s, countries like Bangladesh and Myanmar suddenly find themselves in the eye of the storm. There is no Indo-Pacific, there is no connection with the Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean except through the Bay of Bengal. And that's why we find ourselves right in the middle of this turbulence. We also find ourselves in the middle of being attracted by all major powers who are interested in the region, whether you describe it as Indo-Pacific or the region as described by China as the BRI. They are both essentially same, coming from opposite directions with somewhat with similar ambitions, but different goals. And therefore, what's happening in Bangladesh today is important, perhaps as what's been happening in Myanmar for several decades is important. In this scenario, the one scenario I keep hoping for is that India and China, instead of being adversaries locked against each other, will reach out to each other and adopt a pragmatic approach to say, okay, we are both competing powers, but we need to work with each other, because only then will the century of Asia become a reality. And if this happens, then what is bedeviling our own relations in the micro level between India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, and the overall process of regional cooperation perhaps might take a more pragmatic turn of events and move in more realistic directions, instead of being defined by zero-sum game, matrices being considered. The future of the region does lie with us, and I think one of the major, I agree with Ms. Zara that the problem that SARC could not go forward. And I shared the angst of Dr. Yusuf that SARC unfortunately seems to have become as dead as a dodo for all that despite several organizations still sort of languishing in different forms of inactivity, mainly because of the India-Pakistan factor. And this is, Bangladesh is also a prisoner of its geography. And at that time, when I was dealing with the issue, I said, look, I mean, we have become a prisoner. We cannot do anything with anything around us because of the India-Pakistan standoff. So while they are taking the time to resolve their bilateral problems which spill into our efforts at development, let's try and focus on getting some things done on this side close to us. And in a sense, that strategy worked to some extent, but again, it's come to a sort of, not a grinding halt, it still moves, but it's not moved as far and as quickly as I had hoped it would. Similarly, BIMSTEC 2 came forward with a lot of high expectations, but is still somewhat caught in a dead water zone. So basically, if we want to, as a region, move forward, we have to acknowledge that, yes, there will be big powers, and China is not just an aspiring superpower, it is a superpower. Let's be frank about it. It is a superpower as much as the US is a superpower. Maybe there are relative differences in the strength in various capacities or some capacities. India is an aspiring superpower, but it is still very far away. India is somewhere between the emerging middle powers that have come. I would say most of ASEAN countries, or practically all of them, are middle powers, rising upwards. East Asian countries are all middle powers. We are aspiring powers. We are tantalizingly short of becoming middle powers in that sense. Just the possession of weaponry does not give us the ability to translate our aspirations into exercising influence as a power. That's the problem. How do we go forward? I think denying visas, SARC had all the right aspirations, but the wrong methodology. You can't have trade, you can't increase intra-regional trade if you don't let your traders cross borders, talk to each other, display their wares, and actually trade. And that is something we fell short of. And then for the next couple of decades, we kept struggling on how to do that, and we were never able to do much either through SAPTA or even the goals of SAFTA, because politics and the walls that we set up between ourselves, physical walls across the borders, as well as, more importantly and sadly, the walls inside our minds. The walls inside our minds, I found, were the most difficult walls to bring down. My last assignment, when I was called out of retirement, was as High Commissioner to India. Perhaps my most difficult and most challenging, and yet it was perhaps my most rewarding, because we were able to solve our boundary dispute. India's longest border with the countries adjacent to it are with Bangladesh, not with China or Pakistan. We solved a maritime dispute, and perhaps we should have moved forward, but shortcomings on the part of leadership on both sides, and the inability to acknowledge that the young population growing up were becoming more and more disengaged with what the leadership was thinking, becoming more and more cut off from the economic development that the state was getting in the macroeconomic sphere, but not translating down to fulfilling their ambitions. I think that is what triggered off the upheavals that we have been facing. And it will continue. When these upheavals come, the external element always jumps in. And we'll see how we come out of that. We need to have more people-to-people exchanges. We need to have more civil societies getting together and talking. And certainly, I totally agree that South Asia, not just as a region as a whole, the South Asian countries should abjure being or adopt what Dr. Yusuf called the no-camp policy. I myself have advocated that Bangladesh itself cannot afford to take sides with any power against any other power. Our geography forbids that. We are tucked into the belly of India. We have China a spitting distance away from us, and we have vibrant Southeast Asia growing right next to us. And our inability to overcome this, the divisions that we have, is what is holding us back. So with these words, I'll end here, and we'll see what questions come up and try and answer those respectively. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Karim. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my video on. Yes. Thank you, Ambassador Karim, for those insights, and I'm sure you've given us all much to chew upon, and there'll be questions and points raised and discussions and debates as there should. I'm going to open up the floor for question and answers, but since I have the honor of being chairing the session, I take the opportunity to perhaps ask one or two questions that hopefully and then allow others to mull over the questions that they have. Each of you have spoken from your own backgrounds, reflected on the situations that your own countries are grappling with, but also questions that South Asia is grappling with. And I just would like to perhaps, for the first question I'd like to throw would be a very broad question, because Dr. Yusuf very rightly pointed out that South Asia cannot escape the US-China rivalry. Now, both the United States and China have multifaceted relationships with Pakistan, Bangladesh, and other countries in South Asia. I'd like to hear from each of you how your own countries will negotiate this rivalry, and how will you think Pakistan and Bangladesh will position themselves going ahead. So, Ambassador Jilani, could I start with you?
Yes, yes. You're talking about US-China rivalry. I think, I was recently in Washington, D.C., and during my previous visits, one could see that relations, US-Pakistan relations in Washington circles used to be looked at through the prism of either India or China. But this time, this particular element was missing. And I think the reason explained by some of the scholars to me was that, this change had already begun to take place even before the arrival of President Trump as the President of the United States of America, because there was a very strong sentiment in Washington that for the last 2 decades or so, the US had extended a lot of favors or to the Indian side, or had given much more to the Indian side than was the case from the Indian side to the US, because and then we also heard that there were no really convergences between Washington and India that were developed in the last 2 years. India would take a position on, some of the international issues which were quite different from the position taken by the US, despite the very close relationship that had developed between the two sides. So that is one factor. I think the other factor is that the realization that in the US that Pakistan could also be a, because of your location, because of the nuclear factor, because of its close geographic proximity to China, Russia, Iran, Afghanistan, it is extremely important for the US to build a
और 40
strong,
मिनट में खत्म हो जाएगा, ठीक है.
sorry,
I think somebody.
Sorry.
Please continue. Please continue.
I'll mute myself.
to build a relationship. And I think, as Ambassador Tariq Karim mentioned rightly, that this decision taken by either the Pakistani side or other South Asian countries not to become a part of bloc politics, that is also getting registered in Washington, D.C. And they would like to look at their relationship with South Asian countries on their own merit. I think there was also a realization that in the last several years, they had ignored South Asian countries at the cost of building a strong relationship with India. So that is something that is also being corrected by the current administration. So I would say that this is a kind of a whole of the administration. It appears to be a whole of the administration approach in Washington, D.C., not to sort of look at Pakistan through China lens, which was the case during the previous regimes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Ms. Zehra, would you like to comment on various strategic aspects of how Pakistan would negotiate the relationship?
Yes, thank you so much. I think that fundamentally Pakistan's position remains the same as it has been in the last several decades, and which is basically to have deep strategic ties with China, but certainly not to the exclusion of other countries. In fact, what we are seeing right now, such instances have been there in our history before. I mean, as the competition between China and US, the rivalry gets sharpened, the question of which camp does Pakistan belong to always comes up. But I think Pakistan has been very consistent in its approach towards both these countries. Primarily, it is about Pakistan's own strategic interests. It is primarily about how Pakistan's own interests are promoted, and obviously reliability of relationship and the architecture of relationship. So being a neighbor of Pakistan, given the several decades relationship and the architecture of relationship between China and Pakistan, that relationship falls in a very different category. But again, and not to the exclusion of Pakistan's relations with the United States, which it has been essentially transactional in nature, and it has vacillated from, kind of swung from one extreme to another. And it has also, we've had deep partnership in terms of, whether it was the Afghanistan era, the post-Soviet intervention. So Pakistan has a very pragmatic view on its relations with China and the US, and as I said, we have an architecture of relations with China, and the strategic ties totally are dependent on how we have seen China as a reliable friend, and United States as a country that we've engaged with, and US has engaged with us in times where our interests have overlapped.
Thank you. Ambassador Karim, how about from the Bangladeshi perspective, what kind of pressures do you anticipate Bangladesh having to negotiate, and how do you think they will confront these?
Well, we are already under pressure from all the countries. I mean, and it's not just China and USA, it's also India. We are under three different types of pressure building on us. We had managed to play a fairly equitable set of relationship with all three so far. However, I think the internal turmoil among the younger generation, and remember, It's not just Bangladesh. At least 45% of our population can be classified as belonging to Generation Z, perhaps a higher percentage. The average across South Asia would be something like that. This is something which policymakers lost track of. We developed infrastructure, the GDP grew, the big projects are in place, and yet the economic fallout from that, the beneficial fallouts did not affect this large set of people who have been fulminating. We are beholden to the United States because United States is our largest export target for our ready-made garments. The United States and Europe, basically most of our garments go there. But we are beholden to China because most of our raw materials for all these industries come from there. And of course, we had to have good relations with India because it's through connectivity that we hope to be able to expand and link up the economies, the landlocked economies of Nepal and Bhutan and Northeast India. I am still hopeful that there will be some sort of an accommodation between India and China. I think one of the unintended consequences of Mr. Trump's tariff wars has been that it has pushed India to reassess its relations with the US to a large extent, while India will perhaps follow a very independent foreign policy course. It will want a lot of technology and other stuff from the US. And at the same time, it realizes that it's completely at the mercy of the US unless it can come to a place where it doesn't have to be hostage to those factors. And one of those is, I'm speaking a little bit from hindsight here, because I was posted in China from November 1980 till November 1991. And I saw the transition that China went through. I saw how the policies that Deng Xiaoping, who after having emerged to power in 1979 and having set the goals of 4 modernizations and China catching up with the West, saw that that was not possible unless he ensured stability internally and ensured peace with all the neighbors. And notably in 79, China was almost in a state of war or semi-war with everyone. So I think that sort of policy may be revived in a different form now. And maybe, perhaps, my hope is pragmatism will prevail on the current Chinese leadership and perhaps also on the Americans. Americans are interested in Bangladesh because their interest in the Indo-Pacific is still paramount. The control of the sea lanes is what makes America the superpower it is today. And Bangladesh, in that sense, is right in the center of the storm because we are in the heart of the Bay of Bengal, which connects the Indian Ocean to the Pacific. So we have a strategic importance in that sense. Whether the big powers will start playing games here or not, I sincerely hope not. But if we get sucked into it, then we have a bleak future ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Ambassador Jilani, could I invite you to speak on something that is a fair amount of interest here, and we like your perspectives on the recent agreement between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, the Pakistan-Saudi Arabia defense agreement. Could you explain a little more about what it entails and sort of the broad geopolitical implications of this agreement?
Well, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia has a very, very long-standing relationship in almost every, in different aspects. We have very strong political relations. We have very strong economic relations between the two countries. And we have a very strong defense relationship between our two countries. There was an agreement in 1960 between the defense agreement between Pakistan and the US. And then, since then, for a very long time, Pakistan has been assisting Saudi Arabia in training and, and also advising the Saudi side on defense-related issues. So this is kind of the latest agreement that we see is seen as in Pakistan as the culmination of all those efforts which were being made in order to strengthen this defense relationship between the two sides. And certainly, I think the situation as it was developing in the Middle East also certainly played an important role in the finalization of this agreement. I would like to be clear that a lot of people, they have hinted that it may have kind of a provision regarding the provision of some kind of a nuclear umbrella. My own sense is that that is certainly not true, because there may be there is an attempt by some parties to maintain a degree of ambiguity, because there is a very strong feeling in Saudi Arabia and the Middle East that as far as Saudi Arabia is concerned, it does not really face any nuclear threat from any quarters, whether in the region or outside the region. So I think that kind of ambiguity that they would like to maintain, and that perhaps would also be kind of give them some kind of a psychological kind of a boost in terms of their security.
Thank you so much. Ms. Zehra, you mentioned ASEAN in your comments, and one of the things that we are witnessing as the global order evolves is that in the face of the uncertainties, there are countries are increasingly interested in shaping new partnerships, and I'm curious to hear from you a little about what sort of a role Pakistan envisages ASEAN and the Southeast Asian states playing with regards to partnerships with Pakistan. Is there a growing interest in Southeast Asia? And if so, what domains that particular interest could be in?
Well, I think Pakistan has a solid and old relationship with Indonesia, with Malaysia, two key countries in ASEAN, and beyond that too, Pakistan has tried to engage, whether it's Philippines, whether there are other members of ASEAN, but as of now, we've had Pakistan is I think an observer. It has observer status with ASEAN, and in recent months we've seen convening of ASEAN groups in Pakistan, countries from ASEAN in Pakistan, in an effort to develop trade, etc. But as far as Malaysia and Indonesia is concerned, we have relations which are old, and which whether it is in the area of defense, trade, etc., those are kind of sound relationships. And then of course the big footprint that China has in ASEAN, and by definition I think that extension with China means engaging on a broader level with ASEAN. I think that's how Pakistan is looking at it. Pakistan has tried repeatedly in the past to deepen its relations with ASEAN, but for now I think we're looking really at Indonesia and Malaysia, and haven't quite made inroads beyond these two countries. As Pakistan internally looks at dealing with issues in terms of making the environment within the country friendly for investment, friendly for exports, etc. I think in that area we will see more steps taken, more initiatives being taken. But in terms of its interest in the region, it certainly exists there.
Thank you. Ambassador Tariq Karim, we've in this panel we've heard a fair amount about how bilateral tensions between India and Pakistan stymie greater regional connectivity or integration in South Asia. Could you speak a little bit about how the relatively smaller South Asian states, be they Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Nepal, what sort of steps could they take to improve regional integration?
Well, if Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal were to act as catalyzing agents in trying to forge, because it's in everybody's interest to have better regional relations. Sri Lanka, perhaps a little less than Bangladesh and Nepal, because Sri Lanka is an island country linked with the Indian Ocean. However, their problems are not very dissimilar. But certainly Nepal, Bhutan, and Bangladesh have an interest in each other. Nepal is totally dependent on India for its imports and exports. It's been opening up its relations with China also gradually. Bangladesh is a conduit nation. We have always been a connector. And this is where I think we have a commonality with Sri Lanka as being nations which connect, which facilitate connectivity. Without connectivity, there is not going to be any improvement in trade situation. Let's face it. And unless each of us can improve our trade situations to a larger world apart from what we have, we are not going to be getting anywhere. In the SAARC, we have been cooperating because we all, as small countries, face similar goals and similar aspirations. And I hope we will continue to do. Within the BIMSTEC and the Bay of Bengal, we also have been cooperating. And in fact, some of us are thinking that perhaps the BIMSTEC needs to expand itself. BIMSTEC has been talking of a BIMSTEC plus configuration, where Malaysia and Indonesia and perhaps the adjoining states of Vietnam and Cambodia might also be interested, without detriment to the ongoing process of ASEAN as a grouping. And perhaps it will help SAARC to revive, because it might act as an example of how regional cooperation can advance one's domestic as well as regional aspirations in developing economies.
And I'd like to pick up a sentence that you used. You mentioned, Ambassador, you mentioned that the problems across South Asia are not that dissimilar. A number of the panelists and Dr. Yusuf himself brought out the point that one of the key challenges confronting each of the countries that have been mentioned is income inequality, and so the problem is common across many countries in South Asia, if not all. But are there common solutions? And it's an open question to everyone. Are there common solutions that you could envision?
I don't know whether you'd call them common, but I think there are certainly similar approaches that we need to adopt. Creation of jobs is common. All the countries, all of us have to focus on creating jobs. When you have, university graduates turning out every year and you have to create 2 million jobs, certainly in Bangladesh, it's a daunting challenge. We need to find ways of skill development. All of us need to do that. And yes, common approach, maybe we need to learn it from each other, what we are doing. I mean, Nepal has some areas of remarkable success, as I see from here. Sri Lanka has others. We have some in our own niche. We need to find out what we are doing to achieve those successes in the smaller areas, which can be replicated to the others. And there, I think a consultative mechanism for doing that. And unfortunately, the regional consultative mechanism has not been working very well so far.
Thank you. Ambassador Jilani and Ms. Zera, a common question that's come in on Pakistan, which I would like to address to both of you, is what impact do you think Trump's tariffs would have on Pakistan?
Sorry, Trump's.
Tariffs would have on Pakistan.
Well, I think we are certainly at a reasonable position in the sense that the Pakistan, there are the tariff which have been imposed on Pakistan are 19% tariffs, which I think is quite reasonable given the fact that many other countries, they have been imposed much higher tariffs. This will certainly help boost Pakistani exports because many of the countries which had gone, tariff-free in the past, and they have also been brought in the bracket. Similarly, many of our competitors in our own region and also beyond this region who had previously lower tariffs, but now they get much higher tariffs. As compared to them, I think the Pakistani products will certainly get a boost in terms of its exports to the US side. But then, the issue is there are certainly issues within Pakistan in terms of the higher electricity charges, which certainly when you talk to the members of the business community, they term them as negating the overall advantage that they could accrue because of the lower tariffs which have been placed on Pakistan. We have seen that the exports since the announcement of these tariffs have also gone up by at least 3 to 4%. So and then it is likely that in the coming days this will present a much better picture.
Thank you. Ms. Zera, would you like to add anything to that?
Yes, I guess basically Ambassador Jilani has taken care of it. The only thing is that we are looking right now at two important things. One is US-Pakistan trade and investment relations are undergoing, some progress, some kind of, I think we are working on that, and that will, in the broader scheme of things, impact US-Pakistan trade. What we have seen is that there was some question of balancing trade. So we've imported oil from the US after a long time. This is in addition to the potential advantage there would be for Pakistan, but everything is really it's all work in progress. Even US tariffs with imposed on Indian goods, etc. So as of now, obviously, it's not been a major negative for Pakistan, but we have to wait and see.
Thank you. We're coming up to the time to wrap up, but there'll be time for one more question. And the last question, I would hand over the floor to Ambassador Mansoor Ahmed Khan, please. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Iqbal Singh sir. Thank you so much. It has been a really absorbing discussion. My question to all the three panelists, distinguished panelists, is that we are constantly seeing in our region sub-regional perceived equations or trilateral equations like Pakistan, Afghanistan, India, where if Pakistan and Afghanistan have close relationship, then India is feeling isolated. And if Pakistan and Afghanistan are developing some distances, then Pakistan believes that India is trying to exploit anti-Pakistan space there. Similarly, Pakistan-China-India equation, where India perceives that it has to deal with a dual threat from Pakistan and China. So this kind of, zero-sum situations emerging for broader regional cooperation. So what are the solutions? What kind of approaches the regional countries should adopt, towards overcoming such challenges? And any one of the panelists or or all the three panelists can, are welcome to give their opinion on this.
If I may, Ambassador Mansoor, Naseem Zehra. So, can you hear me?
Yes, please go
Okay,
ahead.
so I mean, I think that this, kind of tension within trilateral context, I think it essentially flows from problems that exist in the bilateral context, right? So, so until and unless the root cause of these tensions that emerge in the trilateral context aren't taken care of, which is therefore improving bilateral relations. The examples you gave between Pakistan, Afghanistan, and India, obviously the tensions between, it's interesting because the commonality is the tension between India and Pakistan. And let me just recall an example. I remember when I think Pakistan was going to get an observer status in ASEAN. This was, I think, 1999, around that time. And we were at the governor's house. This is during the Lahore summit, and Foreign Minister Jaswant Singh was there. And I remember approaching him, and I said, "What is Bangladesh going to? What is India going to say?" I think it was perhaps ASEAN. Because it had vetoed Pakistan's entry or Pakistan's observer status earlier on. And things had improved, right, between Pakistan and India. And he said, of course, India is going to welcome Pakistan. So what I'm saying is that the response really and the solution is on improving bilateral relations, right? Thank you.
I would request any of the other panelists, Ambassador Jalil Bajilani or Ambassador Tariq Karim, having any opinion on this matter.
If I may chip in.
Please go ahead, Ambassador.
Yeah, I think I agree with Ms. Zehra that the bilateral context often tends to go into the trilateral or multilateral set of relationship that we can develop. It happened, for instance, the downturn in bilateral relations between India and Pakistan scuttled the SAARC summit being held following the Kathmandu summit. And unfortunately, Afghanistan's aspirations to reach east were scuttled because of the bilateral frictions between Pakistan and India. Similarly, right now we are facing a situation where there is a reaction amongst the young people on what is perceived as India's hegemonic policies or attitudes. It's more a set of attitudes, I think, in dealing with Bangladesh. And here it's the internal politics which comes into question. The internal politics has always been divided since 1971 and since before 1971. And that has also come into question. In a sense, the warming of relations between Pakistan and Bangladesh has come as a reaction of that cooling of relations between Bangladesh and India. And this sort of binary relations in sets between two countries on two sides affects the overall possibilities of everyone getting together on the same page. And this is something that the leaderships of all the countries have to consciously try and address. Unfortunately, the polarization of politics within countries spills into how the foreign policies and external relations are shaped. We will have to ride this storm out, and I'm confident that we will. This is a passing phase and it will pass. But China and India relationship, certainly I think if China and India relationships were to come to a place of détente rather than standoff, it will benefit us. The Trump tariffs, which have been hit India quite hard, actually has been good for our exports in the particular zones where India and we are competing. And perhaps some Chinese industries may also decide to locate to Bangladesh. That is what we are hoping for. But we have not been too greatly affected by those tariffs overall. So that's my bit of contribution here.
Thank you.
I entirely agree with Ambassador Karim that key to regional peace and security and economic development is the improvement of relationship between Pakistan and India. And I think it would also require a couple of other things. For instance, this Ambassador Tariq Karim and Naseem Zahra Saba had also mentioned that India also needs to overcome its hegemonic ambitions, because this is something which has been the greatest problem faced by all the South Asian countries. Its aggressive behavior has also generated a lot of kind of anxiety and sense of insecurity amongst all the South Asian countries. I think we need to go back to the kind of a peace process, India and Pakistan. We need to resolve our disputes in accordance with international legality. We also need to address our respective concerns on terrorism. We have very, very serious concerns with regard to what India is doing. And I think we also need to, besides the revival of SARC, we also need to develop regional connectivity and improve our economic relations between the South Asian countries. The people-to-people contacts are very, very low at the moment. There are very, very serious visa restrictions which have been imposed. And and there is absolutely negligible business-to-business contacts that is taking place, at least in the context of Pakistan and India relations. So these are some of the aspects which, if taken seriously by the Indian side, I think the situation can be can drastically improve in our region. And the kind of tension that we see or use of other countries against each other, and that I think also needs to be dealt with. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Jalil Abbas Jilani. We have reached the concluding stage of our webinar, and with the permission of my co-host Iqbal Singh Sevia, and with the permission from all the distinguished participants and our keynote speaker, I would like to make a few concluding remarks. I would like to just say that it has been a really fulfilling inaugural session, collaboration session between ISAS and BCPR. I would say that it is a good beginning of this collaboration between the two university-based think tanks. Today we have, since it was our first meeting today, we have discussed broader scenarios and wider dimensions. But the task of the think tanks and task of the research institutes is for digging deeper. And when you dig deeper, you actually go into the areas of exploring real complexities, and you develop clarity on exploring the way forward. Many important challenges have been described today. Some solutions have also been discussed. And then, as Ambassador Tariq Karim has particularly highlighted, that we are now dealing with a new generation of youth who are different from their past generations and Gen Z and the generation after Gen Z. So we have to actually now, provide some solutions, some way forwards for overcoming these challenges. With these few words, we will continue to engage with ISAS, and we will try that ISAS BCPR come forward with more collaborative initiatives in the field of undertaking research and in hosting more joint events. I would like to thank all the distinguished participants who have spared time and participated in our this event, in our inaugural event, have made valuable contributions. I'm really grateful to them. Good afternoon from here, Pakistan, and I think good afternoon in other areas who have joined us also. So thank you very much. It has been a wonderful session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Thank you, everybody.